Hi everyone. So I'm going to try to get out a couple of videos today. I had taken down my channel for a couple of years, and these were a couple of things that I wanted to discuss that I was leading up to, and I feel are just really necessary. So both of these videos are things that you need to know, you have to know, but they will sound counterintuitive. And they might even sound crazy or delusional when you hear them. But I can assure you that it's the truth. So I had been on the narcissistic abuse awareness journey for about a decade now. I first discovered what it was back in 2011 because my ex at the time was exhibiting a lot of strange behaviors, things that were odd to me. Just didn't make sense, and there wasn't any logic to it. There wasn't any reason for the behavior. It just didn't make sense. Little sidebar here. Even if you came from a narcissistic family, intuitively, you know it's wrong. You know that it's wrong deep down. Even if it's all you've ever known, and you still have the savior complex. You need to save people, you need to rescue people, you need to help them, the whole empath thing. You still know that it's wrong. Like, why would they rage at you over making their coffee wrong? Why would they rage at you over moving a box? These are real examples, by the way. I pushed a box over 6 inches and my life is threatened. Real example. Real example. That just doesn't make sense, right? That's just a little, it's just a little extreme. So, back to my story. I started the research about 10 years. And more, I started to put the pieces together. At first, I was just kind of like, wow, oh my gosh, what is this? What is this? And I couldn't get enough because everything started to make sense. Now, when it came to my partner at the time, I was still, I guess I started to put a label on it as to what he was. But when it came to my family of origin, I was in denial for a while about whether these people were that. I knew that certain people had extreme problems, mental problems, immaturity problems, emotional problems, because how could somebody in their 30s, 40s, or 50s behave like a 15-year-old? There has to be a deficiency there of some sort. I remember being in awe and absolutely just confused and bewildered. When I got to be a teenager and I outgrew a certain person in my family, as far as maturity, emotional intelligence went, I became more mature than that person by the time I was a teenager, and that person was more than twice my age. And when I watched my younger siblings reach that age and watch them mature beyond that person as well, that was a shocker to me. So over the years, I started to become more and more aware. And eventually I had a name for it. And then I noticed a pattern. Friends. I picked people who used me and took advantage of me and always wanted something from me, but were never there when I needed somebody. And with partners, this extreme emotional immaturity, and raging, and manipulation and deceit, just on. And even, I had a very short relationship in between the two long-term ones I've had that consumed most of my adult life. The same. And I'm like, even though I didn't deserve what had happened to me, I'm the common denominator here. And so I researched it, and then I started therapy. And then unfortunately, there was the conclusion of the first relationship. And even when you're trying to make yourself better, you're trying to get help, anything will get used against you in family court. I had family court with this first person, and going to therapy, and even if that person's the cause of you going to therapy, the fact that you're in therapy will be a suggestion will be made that you're unstable, even though that person belongs in therapy, but they refuse to go. So, by the time my second long-term relationship came around, I was very well of the trend there. So much so that I knew, about the honeymoon phase, the build-up, the rage phase, and, the discard phase. I knew how to hasten it along. And for a while, I was like, well, maybe for the sake of my children, I will just do whatever they want. I will be who they want me to be. I will do whatever, but I couldn't. I couldn't do it because I'm, to be honest, I am the most honest person I know. I'm honest to others. I'm honest to myself. And I'm like, I can't live like this. I can't live, this is dishonest. I'm not being true to myself. I pretend everything's okay here, and I can't live walking on eggshells. I can't live where I'm crying every day and pushing up furniture against the door because this person's crashing downstairs. I can't live like that. So I brought on the discard phase. I brought it on, and, I had had enough. I was 27 years old, and I started saying no and standing up for myself, and I never went back. I had too many people trying to manipulate me, control my life, and I'm like, I went no contact with everyone. People trying to take advantage, people trying to control me. I ended everything with everybody. My birth family, my marriage, everyone. I lost everything at 27 years old because I was awakened, and I'm like, I'm almost 30. I can't live where people are constantly trying to sabotage, trying to manipulate, trying to control me. It's my time to live my life. I have children of my own now that depend on me, and I can't live like this anymore. I'm not going to carry on this trend. I'm not going to carry on this, I'm not going to allow it. And it's like, they can hate me if they want to hate me, but they hate themselves. That's why they hate other people, and they hate everything because they hate themselves. So I went from the discovery phase to the education phase to the empowerment phase. And that wasn't the end of the journey. Once you're empowered, once you know what this is, and you cut those toxic people off, you still have a long road ahead of you. So this brings me to the last 4 years. I was 27 then, I'm 31 now. You have to get away from those toxic people in order to start healing and building your life. So I cut them off, and for about a year, I'm not going to lie, I was still a bit depressed. I was crying, I was scared. I'm like, how am I going to make it? I have no one. I'm absolutely alone. If my car breaks down, I'm alone. If my refrigerator breaks, I'm alone. If I get stranded, I'm just alone. So then I went into survival mode, and I guess in a different capacity than I had already been living in survival mode. Let's be honest with ourselves here. When we're in relationships with cluster Bs in any capacity, it's survival mode. But I went out, I got a job, I finished my education, our lights never went out, there was never a shortage of food, we were never homeless. I made it because I was like, I have nobody. And honestly, I didn't have anybody before because I had to beg certain people to help me with certain things or to come with me to appointments. I didn't have anybody anyway, but this was just clarity, and maybe I needed that. Because it's funny how as soon as I went no contact with these people, my life just came together. Every single goal I had just suddenly came into reality. It's amazing how when you cut off people that are constantly trying to sabotage your life, can become the most powerful, beautiful, wonderful thing that you always had hoped for. So I got away from them, and then I started to be able to put my life back together. But the thing is, once you go no contact, like I said, there's still a lot of work to do. There's no way, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, but there's no way you can get out of abuse relationships for several decades and not have some serious baggage, have some serious stuff to work on. Even though I didn't deserve what happened to me, you don't deserve what happens to you. You are the common denominator. And so you're going to need to go to therapy to get through that. So that's the very next thing I took on. I went to therapy for a couple of years, and I got some help for some serious codependency issues, some attachment issues, abandonment issues, people pleaser issues. I was so broken from the years and years of abuse that I was a yes woman. I was afraid of making other people upset with me. I would put myself in dangerous situations, unhealthy situations, so people wouldn't get upset with me. That stopped after therapy. I used to not be able to make eye contact with people. And that's another thing. I will make a note right here. I did make a video before about this, about the extreme misconceptions and lack of awareness about domestic violence victims or child abuse victims. If people can't make eye contact with you, it doesn't mean that they're deceiving you. It could mean that they have been abused. They're scared of making eye contact with you. People would always tell me that they were annoyed by me looking down or looking away instead of looking them in the eyes. I couldn't do that because of abuse. That's better. I used to be terrified of public speaking. I do that every day now. I speak in front of people every day now. So it's you are going to need to get to the bottom of your baggage. Once you go no contact, that probably has to happen first. If you want the optimal results, now obviously you have to wait till it's safe to do that, until you have a plan set up to do that. But if you want to completely clear this out, and I'm telling you, it can happen. You can have the most beautiful life you never thought possible. On my last videos, I was saying, in my home, we don't do put downs. We do peaceful holidays. We don't do yelling. We don't do meanness in my home. I knew that was never going to be anything that I allowed with my own children. But to have a day where we wake up peaceful and we're all happy and we get along and it's calm. I didn't know that I could get away from that. I'll tell you what, after therapy, digesting all this, I can sleep well at night. My head is clear. And like I said, I've achieved all of these goals that I had for years, but I was like, I'm never going to get there. I did. After therapy, and there's no time limit on therapy. For me, it took me about 2 years. And nobody's ever perfect, but I can tell you now that when I'm happy and I love myself and accept myself and I can function like a normal person, almost as if nothing ever happened to me, I would say it was a success. But you will forgive yourself. You will forgive them. And this is the part where you're going to start to think this sounds crazy, counterintuitive, but it takes work to get here. And when I say you forgive them, let me just make a couple things clear here before I get angry comments. You are not forgiving them for them. You are forgiving them for you. And I know that's kind of a cliche statement, but it's absolutely true. When you come full circle with your healing, when you make progress, you will forgive yourself and them. They are human. That's not an excuse. Now, this is the second thing. It's not an excuse for what they did to you. They can do better if they're willing to admit it and go to therapy themselves. Everyone is human. Everyone is capable of making mistakes. They have mental illness. They literally can't help that thought process, I guess. Now, if they were willing to be brave enough and go to therapy, then they could help that thought process. But it's a survival mechanism that they adapted in childhood to survive what they went through. They were so traumatized that they became sort of robotic, where they can't relate to people the same way that you and I can. And then, people will say to me here, well, I was abused by a narcissist and I didn't turn out that way. No, but everybody's different. And if you had narcissistic parents, chances are you still have narcissistic tics. You didn't get out of it scot-free. You didn't get out of it completely normal. We all have our wounds if we went through that as children. There isn't any way to get out of it perfectly fine. There isn't. I would bet you have some unhealthy behaviors too. I did. And so I took myself to therapy and took responsibility for that. But you will, at the end of your healing journey, and I would say it's a lifetime of maintenance, reinforcing boundaries. But at the end of your therapy, you will even develop compassion for them. And let me disclaimer this one too, before I get a bunch of dislikes on this. You're going to have to get to this part of your healing to understand what I'm meaning, but this is what it's going to look like. After you've forgiven them, you will have compassion because they are in a constant state of chaos. They are in a constant state of misery, a constant state of unhappiness. They can't experience joy like we can. They don't experience love like we do, trust like we do, bonding. In fact, it's impossible for them. If you're living in a state of misery like that, it's got to be lonely. And that's why they pull other people down with them, because it's horrible to see everybody else enjoying life and loving and trusting and bonding, and they're all alone and isolated like this. That's why they do that. You begin to see them as wounded children. Now, I'm not saying let them walk all over you. I'm not saying to let your guard down here. But once you understand why they are the way they are, their tics, that they're wounded children, you will start to understand and adjust your behavior accordingly. This is the end goal here. This is what I'm getting to. This is the end point. This is how I know that I have healed. And I can interact with them peacefully without wounding myself. They're almost like children that need firm boundaries and direction. And I'm not trying to be insulting to them, but the age of your most severe trauma is where you are emotionally going to remain. If some of them were the most traumatized at 4, they will act like a 4-year-old when they're upset. You've seen it, I've seen it, I'm not lying. I was in the middle of therapy, and I developed some amazing techniques to handle my divorce and be able to interact. And this person, before, I used to be very, very triggered. They would bring up things about my childhood trauma or my first relationship, knowing that it was the most traumatic thing I had ever been through in my life. And they would write me like 4, page-long emails a day, and I was expected to respond because per the court order, we had 24 hours to respond. And so then I was expected to read these and respond to them. And I learned some very, very helpful techniques in therapy. Boundaries. And the most helpful one for me was dialectic therapy. Checking the facts. Because of how I was raised and conditioned, I had to respond instantly. I didn't have time to digest what was being asked of me. I didn't have time to think about it and calm my emotions and respond. Just instant, expected. So that conditioning over years and years and years, I didn't even think about things before I responded to them. This instant. That's a form of manipulation. So I used to be really worked up and respond, and I would let other people control my emotions. Well, I don't do that anymore. I have boundaries, and I know how these people work. I know that they are needy for attention. They need what we call in the narcissistic abuse support community supply. And they'd like to have control over your emotions. Even if you are going crazy inside, sick to your stomach, angry or sad, you don't let them see it. So these are the methods that I employ at my, in my day-to-day living now. And I can say that I have an amazing relationship. Co-parenting, this is possible with my second ex, co-parenting relationship. Number one, gray rock. I do not respond to anything that is an attempt to get me emotional. And even if I do get emotional about it, I don't let them see it at all. Absolutely not. Straight poker face, level tone of voice. Number two, this is more important than number one. Check the facts. Is what they're saying to you valid? Are they saying it because it's true, or are they saying it because they're trying to get you upset? There's constructive criticism, and there's the tear down type of criticism. They're usually trying to tear you down, and it's not even valid. I had someone tell me recently that they thought my nails were disgusting, and why would anybody get nails like that? And I said, well, I like them. And I check the facts now. I'm like, do my nails really look bad? They're not too long. They're not an awful color. They're not like neon, or they're not, I think they're nice. So I realized that in that moment, and even if they didn't like them, honestly, I love them. Coffin tip pink nails are my favorite. And heck, 10 years from now when they're out of style, I might still get them. I was like, that person is having a bad moment. They're having a bad day. They're just trying to make me upset. That's not real. They're not going to hurt my feelings. You got to check the facts. You got to remain non-emotional, as hard as that is. And you got to stop yourself and check the facts. If they're sending you text messages, or they're calling, or they're emailing you constantly, turn your phone off. Don't check. Well, if you say, well, it's a co-parenting situation, I have to check. Well, in that case, with my first ex, even if there was an emergency, I would never know it. So if that person's contacting me, it's just to stir up drama. Or you need to be able to check. So you do have a co-parenting relationship, and say that person, you get lucky enough that they would tell you if there was an emergency. Check the email. Is it stirring up drama? Then turn it off, walk away. If it is an emergency, then speak with them. But if it's an email, chances are it's not an emergency. They would text or call you. If they're calling you and you're answering because you're afraid it's an emergency, and they try to start a fight, have the courage to say, I'm sorry, this isn't getting anywhere. If you would like to, calm down and use respectful language, you can call me back tomorrow. We'll try again tomorrow. You don't have to engage with them. No matter who that person is, you don't have to engage with them, okay? So as crazy as it sounds, this is what your healing journey will kind of look like. And you might repeat the steps, and that's okay. You might go back down like the stages of grief and have to work your way back through. But you'll discover And then you'll have this burning curiosity and you'll educate yourself. Then you'll start to stand up for yourself and you'll start to set boundaries. Maybe then you'll go no contact, enter therapy, and you will forgive them. You will forgive yourself. You will develop even a compassion for them and understanding. This does not mean what they did was okay. I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. But then you will be confident, you will be self-assured, and you will implement life-changing strategies with these people, and your life will be peaceful, you will be successful, and it will be a life that you never thought you would ever have. I am 31 years old, and I felt like my life began at 30. I've never been so free. I had never experienced joy in my life until after years of no contact and therapy. I experienced joy, bliss, a zest for life. I do what I want to do when I want to do it. If I want to sign up for a volunteer position, start a new hobby, I will do it. I come home and there's no yelling. There's no cursing. There is peace and tranquility in my home, and I will never go back. And I don't think I even have, once you get to this point, I don't think you can ever go back to what you once were, because you're a bird that has broken out of that cage, escaped from that cage, and you recognize red flags now, and you know how to respond to people. It's like a skill I never had. Boundaries and critical thinking. I never had those before. Breaking things down in that moment. Is this true? If it is true, does it matter right now? If it matters, what can I do to fix it? Can I fix it? I was never even allowed to explore those thoughts. In 27 years, I was never even allowed to entertain those thoughts. I wasn't allowed to think for myself. I do it now, and I don't think I'll ever go back. And as crazy as that journey sounds to you, that's what it will be like for you. And they might not be in the same order, and you might have, repeat those steps a little bit, but you will get there. If you push and you want this, if you want your freedom, if you have goals you've never gotten to achieve in your life, if you want it bad enough, you will get it.